creating cultural awareness and understanding. This is Culture Clique. Culture Clique is written and produced by KQAL FM on the campus of Winona State University.
Today on Culture Clique, we meet the latest addition to the Winona State University Mass Communication Department, Professor Patrick Lichty. In addition to education, Lichty is also a contemporary artist and a digital activist. KQAL's MCMD sat down with Lichty to discuss his views on art, academics, and his involvement in the Yes Men, an activist group that has caused quite a stir over the years. Stick around as KQAL's MCMD helps us welcome Professor Patrick Lichty to our community, today on Culture Clique.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. How's my levels?
Good.
Good? Okay, great.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Not a problem. Glad to be here.
So, introduce yourself.
My name is Patrick Lichty. I'm one of the new professors in mass communication here at Winona, and I have some very strange backgrounds, which I think that we'll talk about here in the next couple minutes.
So, your website bio, you have yourself listed as conceptual media artist, activist, curator, and educator. Which of these titles most resonate with you now versus 10 years ago?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think that I'm much more of an educator than I used to be. I first started out as an electrical engineer. Then about 10 years into that, I quit and basically started a design studio and contemporary art studio. And to be perfectly honest, that went about 15 years until really the graphic design market took a hit in the early 2000s. And I went to graduate school, became an academic, and I've been an academic for about the last 15 years. So I'll just say very quickly is that at first, really, I was looking at academia as something to really kind of support my contemporary art and design practice. But the thing is that as time has gone on, really, I've really fallen in love much more with the idea with education, and I've really considered myself an educator, probably foremost at this point.
Nice. So compared to 10 years ago, how does that identity from 10 years ago transmute into today?
Ooh, transmute. That's a great word. Okay, good. I feel like this is like some sort of alchemy happening here. As we're trying to get the Philosopher's Stone going. Let's see. 10 years ago, that would be 2011. That was about the time I was running a media theory thread at Columbia College Chicago and basically teaching installation art, teaching machinima, the stuff that probably wind up doing here. So I think what's interesting about this is that the transmutation that has taken place from one way to another. I was very involved with performance art and media intervention as well as design, but I think as my arc swung out through the United Arab Emirates, not Saudi Arabia, thank you, but that's okay. What happens is that most of my positions have been very involved in print and interactive design. So in other words, my practice was very much more around things like design, architecture, virtual reality, and how this relates to augmented reality, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence, and those were my areas of research out there. But the thing is how these things relate to design, although I consider myself an artist as much as a designer, but this is how things worked into this notion of education and being kind of a cultural practitioner at large.
So take me through the Lichty Hall of Fame of projects. What are a few that you're really proud of?
Oh my God. Okay. So I've been in what I'd call cultural production for about 30 years. In other words, that's a one way of saying that, not saying that I'm an artist, curator, or anything in general. In around the 2000s, I was involved in a couple activist groups, groups for about 15 years. We were called Artmark from about 1996 to 2000 until we did a fake website called GATT.org, which was kind of a spoof of the World Trade Organization, which then rose to the kind of corporate hoaxsters called the Yes Men, which I was with. Yeah, I'm still kind of an adjunct, but mostly involved with from up to about 20, the early teens. And basically, I wound up going out to Arabia, so it was really hard to work on projects out there. So we can talk about them in a little bit. And then also the other thing is I was very involved in all forms of media art. I love this idea of how mediation, taking things outside of the digital and bringing it into the digital and seeing how it glitches and seeing how it falls apart and recombines, because there's always an error somewhere. There's always a glitch. And I always love seeing what happens with that and seeing how things transmutate as they go into the mediated landscape. So in saying that, having done a lot of performance art and actually I also do a lot of work with robots and AI and drawing and performance and things like that. I started a performance art group called Second Front that was started in 2006. We were a performance art group that did about 50 performances in the online virtual world Second Life, and we're still around, but we haven't done anything for a couple years now. And the thing I thought was very interesting in regards to that was performance art was the idea of, using the body as a medium. And I was very involved in theater for a long time. And the thing that I thought was so fascinating about using virtual worlds for a performance art area is what happens to performance art, something that's so dependent on the body, when you take the body out of it. I have an answer for that, actually.
What happens?
Okay, what happens? Well, the idea of affect, the idea of still, emotional engagement and that sort of thing. So say, for example, if you're in Second Life and you have a virtual gun and somebody, you see somebody shoot the other person with a virtual gun, you still flinch. It's almost like there's a neuroscientist by the name of Vijay Ramachandran who talks about this thing called the mirror cortex, this thing that allows us to have empathy. So the thing is that this is the thing how we play with dolls and even learn from each other. In other words, say, for example, we sort of, through the mirror cortex, we copy each other and reconstruct what that other person is doing. And so in Second Life, I think that doing performance, even as bizarre as it is, we're still putting ourselves in the place of our avatars. And, as an aside, this is also, kind of one of my reasons why, my feelings that we really connect with our avatars in a very real and direct way. As a video game designer, I'm really not much. I'm not much for more than symbolic violence, against other living beings, because I've done some things like I've actually gone out and did a project where I went out to the Aleutian Islands, to the island of Adak, and I visited the minefields and the naval base where my father was at, while he was dying and I did this project to kind of understand him, and by going out and seeing where he was in World War II and doing a documentary of the place, and then coming back and then sharing that with him. So as you're kind of, looking at all of these, all these different things, as I said, basically documenting, mediating. Lately, what I've been doing is that I just created a piece called Confinement Spaces. Is that I was under lockdown in Abu Dhabi, and to tell you the truth, it was driving me crazy. And I found actually there was an app called Displayland that allowed me to do 3D scans of the environment around me. And I just started doing it out of sheer boredom because I was just going nuts. And so what was interesting about this is that I got these great glitched, scans of like my apartment, the pool around my apartment, the roundabouts, because in the UAE we have roundabouts, we don't have intersections, and different areas that I actually got a commission to do this, and I basically created. It's actually going to go online with a group called a gallery called Nation 2.0. Probably within the next month, but it's about it's 12 spaces in that you can access on the web using VR, using web VR. And the thing is that you can go through all these kind of fractured landscapes that I scanned, and just kind of look at these areas that I called confinement spaces. In other words, these places that I was confined to, but was able to go further and further out from my apartment, then go into other states in the Emirates and that sort of thing. But these things were all iconic things. Like I did a scan of the plane that is featured in Nicolas Cage's movie Lord of War. In other words, like that, that Russian gunrunners plane and that sort of thing that says it's off somewhere in some distant land. Well, that's actually in the Emirate of Quwain. And it's just this old Russian, Ilyusha cargo plane that's starting to fall apart. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to catch before I came back. And then the thing is, I went to there's actually the famous clock tower in Dubai, and I did a scan of the Louvre Abu Dhabi, and several things in there, and then you put these things together in kind of this guided tour of these spaces in which I was in lockdown, and so I'm very proud of that, of that piece.
Were people generally receptive of the process of that? Was there were people confused about it? Did you have to explain to sort of bystanders why you were?
You mean when I was scanning? Well, you know what? Half the time there wasn't anybody there because everybody was in lockdown, mm-hmm. right? The only thing that happened was that when I was there's this neighborhood in Dubai called Deira, where the clock tower is. I was basically going around that for about an hour doing different scans of it. Cops were judiciously at the side of the roundabout saying, okay, what's this weirdo doing? He's like going around this. Is he a tourist? Is he doing something weird? And it's like, and I actually went over and I said, hey guys, how are you doing? And they said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm just doing an art project for Dubai Culture, and I'm doing a scan of these things, and people will be able to look at these things, online, and they make very interesting shapes and that sort of thing. Oh, that's really cool. Usually, the Emiratis are really, they're really receptive when you're, appreciating the architecture, appreciating the culture, and so the thing is that if they know that you're not the wrong kind of weirdo, they're fine. They love it when people who are residents there are enjoying the place.
Nice.
So anyway,
so tell me about the Yes Men and how are they saving the world?
Well, Who knows where they're saving the world, but
They walk among us.
Yes, they do. So, basically, as I said, I was doing a lot of critical music videos back in the early 1990s with a visual sociologist friend of mine named John Epstein, who was still a very close friend of mine. And the thing is, we were very into this idea of virtual ethnography and virtual sociology and online culture. But the thing is online culture as we know it was just starting. The World Wide Web was just starting, but a lot of this was cable TV and places like, I'm gonna use some very old words like Delphi and CompuServe and America Online and all these places that were sort of pre-web spaces. And so what happens is that we were doing rock videos about these, and then two other guys who started Artmark, of course, would become the Yes-Men, and the guys who you see the most with the Yes-Men, Igor and Jacques, we met and said, you know what? Those are some really interesting videos. Why don't you get together with us and let's do this thing? So basically, what happened was we were Artmark until something happened. Is that we started a corporate website for the World Trade Organization called GATT.org, which stood for the Global Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. And we looked like the World Trade Organization, but we weren't the World Trade Organization. And I think it's probably best to say that, let's see here, the folks who did American Movie did the first documentary about us. And so what was funny about that is that there were some interesting things. We talked about some. We posed as certain corporations, like we were the World Trade Organization, we were McDonald's. But the thing is, the World Trade Organization, we just we put forth some kind of provocative ideas, like remote control of workforces through this. I don't know, remote control suit, but I think you really need to see the movie for that. I think it's best not to say much about that on air. And then the other thing is that we went to Plattsburgh College in New York and the thing is that people don't know it's us. They think we're the World Trade Organization. They think we're McDonald's. And so what happens is that we come in giving everybody cheeseburgers, and then we talk about the recycling hamburgers using NASA stuff. But the thing is that liquid waste is recycled on the space station. But the things we talked about recycling solid waste, and I did some animations that were rather graphic about that. And so that got a little weird. But the thing is that kind of what happens is that this sort of activism is kind of an absurdist poke at corporate culture. And the thing is what we're doing is kind of like what Picasso was saying. We're kind of like that telling lies that point at the truth. The thing is that some people would say that maybe they agree or disagree with us. But the thing is that there was one project we did is that we did a fake New York Times that would put out 10,000 copies, took it out in New York and gave it out, I think, in 2009. And across the top said, Iraq War ends, and saying, $15 minimum wage, all these things. And so basically what happened is that we gave out the New York Times that we would like to see. So really what's going on here is that as opposed to creating fake news, we, number one, mean to be found out. And then secondly, the thing is that the people who we are having, the good-natured joke against, or maybe pointed joke, with, the thing is that well, if they disagree with us in the form of a lawsuit or something like that, well, that serves our point. So the thing is that on one hand is that if they choose to disagree with us in one way or another, well, then in our opinion, it proves that they're the people who we say they are. So, but the thing is I'd say that, as I said, I haven't been that active, and since I'd been out in Arabia for obvious reasons. But what I've been seeing with Igor and Jacques, they have a lab at NYU called the S Lab, and they've been doing fantastic work facilitating activists who are doing this sort of thing, what they call tactical media. In other words, basically going out and doing absurdist kind of pranks that basically draw attention to things, which I think is awareness is essential, especially in these days.
So as we've become more and more mediated, do you think that this sort of spoofing is easier, harder? How do you think it's changed over time?
Well, I think it's become harder because of the fact that I think that things like I think that over a period of time you get recognized, and I think people get a little bit used to these sort of antics. And also the other thing is that sometimes I think that with fake news, these sort of tactics, become kind of different, And the thing is the fact is that some people say, oh, you guys were doing fake news. No, actually, we weren't. We meant to be found out. And the thing is with fake news is that it's supposed to suggest an alternate reality, and and this is something that we definitely weren't intending. So, and I'm kind of sidestepping the notion of fake news for the moment, for obvious reasons.
Wisely done. Who is Gilda the Golden Skeleton, and can you maybe introduce me?
Oh my! Well, I don't know if I can introduce you. I think she's probably in some closet somewhere in New York. But so, what we wound up doing is, as the Yes Men, we had a little campaign where we were representing Dow Chemical for a couple of different things. Is that we had a series of interventions that were based around the 20th anniversary of the accident in Bhopal, where Dow Carbide emitted a huge cloud of gas, killing and injuring thousands of Indians, and which actually Union Carbide said that, actually they were bought by Dow, and they said, well, you know what, $500, a person is enough for them. We disagreed. So actually we brought out this project called DowEthics.com, and it did two things. One, we announced on the 20th anniversary that as quote, Dow Chemical, we were selling Union Carbide for $12 billion and giving that back to the people of Bhopal, which the BBC World bought. And we were on the air for a couple of hours and then went back home, and then the phone calls started coming. As, are you really part of Dow Chemical? And says, could you tell? And so another part of this was we created this program called the Acceptable Risk Calculator. So basically what it was is that, and Gilda was our spokesperson, who was this golden skeleton that was supposed to be in the corporate closet. And so what happens is that you could go online and you could say, okay, what's the profit? What's the loss? What's the possible loss of life? And that sort of thing. And basically really it suggested the idea of looking at the loss of a corporate action, the potential loss of life, the potential loss of profit and the potential loss of popular sentiment. And the thing is that if you think about that, in many ways, these are hard realities of some areas in corporate activity. But the thing is that really what happens is that this was a hard self-assessment at how corporations assess themselves as world's stewards of the world. And what we were kind of looking at is that we took this to a trade conference, and people actually asked whether they could buy this. And the thing is that whether they wanted to have licenses to a sort of program that somehow did a calculus of the loss of life for profit was utterly shocking to us. And I don't know. I mean, the thing that I'd say is that, are the yes men saving the world? I think what happens is that, on the world stage, especially in recent years, I think what happens is that we as human beings are at a place in time in which we are really kind of the masters of our own fate, and we have to really be intentional about our purposes and how we're going to treat one another as people, and how we're going to continue as a species.
You're listening to MCMD with the latest addition to the Mass Communication Department at Winona State University, Professor Patrick Lichty, on Culture Clique.
So the way I kind of read it is, you're saying, look at him and laugh. Look at them and laugh. But the big thing is, look at them.
Yeah, is that basically what's happening is that we are we are telling the most pointed sort of joke. In other words, the joke that points at the truth. But the issue is that and then the matter is that these are jokes that speak to power, and then the thing is that if power doesn't laugh along, then that begs a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you look at like medieval times, the jester, the trickster, was always the person who was probably one of the most powerful people in court, And if you look at also, historically, Jonathan Swift, who wrote, A Modest Proposal, who was criticizing the treatment of the Irish, during the famine by the British. These are some powerful gestures. And so what happens is that sometimes I'd say the greatest activism is possibly through laughter. Depending on where you're pointing your joke.
Yeah. So you've sort of taken us on a whiplash flight throughout your life. So
sure.
Give me your last 5 places of residency, and then ending with Winona, give me your little Yelp review.
Oh, man. Area. Okay. So let me go back. Wow, that's interesting. Okay. I'd say, probably the most interesting was, I'll just say that I was born in Akron, Ohio, land of Devo, which is kind of frames things a bit. I'd say, let me go back to about 2000, because I was living between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. And then after that, I went to graduate school up at Bowling Green, where actually my good colleague and friend Devin Hackman in the program, he also went to, but we were in different programs. I was in Chicago for quite some time, and then up until about 2013, and then did a couple years in Milwaukee. And I'll just say, as an aside, in the early 1990s, I lived in the Twin Cities for a few years. So, but that just saying, I'm not a stranger to the area. Mm-hmm. And then after that, 5 years in the UAE, in various states, Sharjah, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi, and then I'm back to being in Minnesota. So, Yelp review. I think that's unfair, because what happens is that because of things being under lockdown and things being so different under COVID at the moment, I think that when I'd say parts of Winona aren't Winona at the moment, but the thing is I think that Minnesota Nice is still in full effect. The welcome that I've had from my colleagues and that sort of thing has been fantastic. I'm looking forward to being in a place that's green again. I'm looking forward to being on the lake. I'm looking forward to being on the river. The cheese is always here. That's the thing. In other words, what happened is that, I bounced around the world a lot. Actually, I was also in Central Asia a lot. Well, in the summers and bounced around a lot of places like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Georgia, Azerbaijan. It's like been to a lot of places that, a lot of people basically almost can't point to on a map. But the thing is that really what my reasons for coming to Winona are the fact that I wanted to sit down and, settle down into a program that I could help build with people like Professor Mehmet and Professor Heckman and, our great chair, Tanya Ryan, and, everybody here at Winona. And for me to have, really in a bucolic university setting with my family, where, really what happens is that I can sit down and really have a beautiful time of life as an academic, which, while still hopefully trying to maybe save the world a little bit.
So, it's a part-time gig saving the world now.
You know what? I think trying to save the world is a full-time gig for all of us.
Mm. So we're at week 3 of the semester.
Yep.
What is your conception of Western students compared to students from the Emirates?
Thank you. I was actually I'm actually teaching 172 printed web, and I was talking to them about this. The thing that I think is interesting is that, and I'm going to start sounding like an academic for a minute. This is, I hope
put on the monocle.
I hope, yeah, it's like, excuse me, I'm going to talk like an academic just for a minute or two.
Get the bubble pipe.
That'd be good. I think that, I think that Arabia as a whole is a place that's understands where it is in history, and it's trying to undergo technological and social change on a generational scale. I think what's going on here is that they want to be part of much more part of an international culture, and they're doing it. And the Dubai Expo has been postponed until 2021, which is going to be really kind of focusing on the Emirates as one of the Middle East's central points of commerce and high tech and things like that. And so what I'm seeing is that I'm seeing the Emirates investing in their youth as trying to help build the Middle East. The one thing is that I see things as being mixed. As I only taught women. I was on the women's campus, and I see just big differences between different families. Ones that are more traditional, less traditional. And the thing is that one of the biggest differences was teaching non-native speakers, and Arabic is pretty divergent from English. So, and so what happens is that, you know, I think that the women that I worked with were bright, eager to learn. They know that they're part of the future of their country, and so it was a pleasure working with them. The one thing is that there were places in which they were excelling, and there were places where you know, the differences in culture and language honestly causes some difficulties. So, you know, but also on the other hand is that, you know, just most women I worked with were just smart as whips. And that's fantastic. And then on the other hand is that I also find when I come over here and I'm working with, you know, the students in Winona, is that I find them friendly, eager to learn. And I think the thing that's common between both groups of students is, in other words, if I'm showing them something that's interesting and of the future and, you know, things they hadn't seen before, I think university students have this universal quality of curiosity, and that's why we're here. And this is one of the reasons why I love being an academic. So the thing is that what I think was different, you know, there were there were cultural differences, but the thing is, I think that there are much more similarities than there were differences, because of the fact that, you know, the women I worked with, you know, would you know, come up to me and want to talk to me about Tarantino movies, which is not exactly what you would imagine. You know, somebody in a Shayla coming up to me and saying, "Oh, hey, it's like, would you like to talk about some of the gorier parts of Tarantino movies?" And I'm going like, maybe.
In my office, maybe.
So anyway, you know, but they were cool. They were good to work with. And the thing is, so far, the students I've been working with here have been, you know, it's been 3 weeks. I've been here literally 10 days. You know, have been great as well. And the thing is that what I'm really looking forward to is I'm looking forward to, you know, building a student community around, you know, the creative digital media program, and that, you know, that hopefully we'll be doing some really interesting stuff.
Final question.
Sure.
So going back to the 20-year-old Ohio self, if you could call that man and give him a bit of advice.
I'd say your life is going to be nothing like you thought. I'd probably say to listen to yourself a little bit more than you thought. I would probably tell him to not be so much into electrical engineering. Maybe go into art and programming. You know, but the thing is that I think I would have told myself to have a lot more confidence in myself back then, which I just didn't have. And I'd say, you know, you can do what you want to do. And I think that's actually really with a little bit of patience and a little bit of focus. I think that's something that I can say to pretty much a lot of my students. And it's like, may not be the way you see it, because I wanted to be in special effects in the movie industry, you know, in science fiction, you know, like Star Wars and Star Trek and things like that. But the thing is that I think I got something better, which I think is a lesson to me and something that I want to, you know, give to my students, because the fact is that you can have what you want, but you may not get it the way that you thought you were going to get it. And if you leave yourself open to possibility, magic might happen.
Nice. Very poignant final note.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for joining me.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks again to Professor Patrick Lichty for joining us today on Culture Clique. To learn more about Professor Lichty, visit winonan.org. To keep up on all things Winona and the surrounding area, tune into Culture Clique Thursdays at 12:30 right here on 89.5 KQAL. I'm Bill Stoneberg, and we've just heard from KQAL's MCMD and Professor Patrick Lichty today on Culture Clique.
creating cultural awareness and understanding. You've been listening to Culture Clique. Support for Culture Clique is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Culture Clique is produced by KQAL-FM on the campus of Winona State University. For more information, look us up on the web at kqal.org. And thanks for listening to Culture Clique.